again, thank you to HFMA Region 5 for allowing us to do the CHFP presentation. I am John Lloyd. I am with Wakefield and Associates, and my co-host, who will be alternating sessions or modules over the next couple of weeks, is Christine Fontaine, and she is with Waystar.
Hey, everybody. Happy to be on with you guys. Thanks, John.
We'll do a quick introduction and kind of go through some HFMA certifications and why to get certified. So one thing about being certified for me, and I also speak for Christine, it's one of those things that's enabled us to kind of give back and help out other HFMA members actually get established and get your HFMA certifications going. It's been a great boost in my career. It's something that, being either on the hospital side or on the vendor side, is something that you take with you. And, you know, it says, hey, you know, I am certified. I pretty much have done the exam and I know what I'm talking about when it comes to healthcare. Value for individuals, it increases your learning potential and with the peers. It's value for the organizational leaders, build a culture of learning. I know for me here at Wakefield, we basically, anybody that's a HFMA member, we give them, you know, additional little bit extra coaching and things that they can do to get their certifications. A couple of certifications we focus on here are CHFP and CRCR. And one thing's great about this certification programs now, they offer a digital badge that you can actually share on LinkedIn. So if you see a lot of people displaying their CHFP badge, that there again, I think it's a great thing to share with your peers in the industry. As an HFMA credential validates that you have an education needed to succeed in your field, position or person for advancement, show your manager committed to staying up to date in your profession, and differentiate in a earner in the job market. I've actually seen some positions advertised where CHFP preferred as far as actually some of the qualifications they look for in that job. And these are just a couple of the HFMA certifications: the CHFP, Certified Healthcare Financial Professional, the CRCR, Certified Revenue Cycle Representative, the CSAF, which is Certified Specialist Accounting and Finance, and Certified Business Intelligence, Specialist Business Intelligence, CSBI. Purpose of Chapter Learning Program is highlight key knowledge for strong job performance, provide an overview of important concepts. The in-depth presentations that will follow will cover the online course content. And we will start off with Module 1, which is the business of healthcare. And this is going to provide you a big picture, a multiple disciplinary perspective on how things are handled, and business savvy. The business of healthcare, which is Module 1, consists of 6 courses. One will be the big picture. The second will be financial accounting concepts. The third, cost analysis principles, strategic planning, strategic financial issues, which is 4, 5, managing financial resources, and number 6, looking to the future. The end of course assessment, a 90-minute assessment with 75 questions. One thing I want to encourage you when we're going through this, if you've not taken the exam, go out and take the exam, because if you don't do a passing grade the first time you pass it or the first time you try it, you can go back in 30 days and take it. So there again, if you kind of go out and get a feel for the exam, what you're not strong in, and kind of take a couple of notes, I think that's a great learning experience. And there again, if you have any questions for Christina and I, feel free to reach out to us at any time. And there again, like with the exam, it just kind of gives you a little bit of feedback on what areas that you're strong in. I know for me, I have a revenue cycle background. So on some of the financial modules, that was my weaker ones. So I like going through the process that we're going to be providing for you guys and then taking the exam just to get started. It's going to give you a little bit more focus on what you're strong in. Tips for learning, concept guide. It identifies key concepts, terms, and applications you must know for the end of module examination. Use it. And there again, sign up for the CHFP certification module at hfma.org. One thing again, there's actually some test modules that you can go through before you take the exam. So again, I encourage you to be involved with that also. And there again, this kind of gives you a link or what the link looks like once you get to the HFMA page. I do know over the past couple of weeks on the new format that HFMA has set up, there has been some problems. So I've been corresponding back and forth a little bit with the association. So hopefully they're going to get those worked out in the next couple of weeks. For our learner's guide, I know we did have a slight problem in getting some documentation out, but we are either going to load it up to the websites or get the documentation out. But for today, you'll get an introduction, which we just went over for the slide deck, CHFP Module 1, Course 1, the big picture, which we're going to go into shortly, an evaluation form, and then Module 1, Course 1, keywords. For me, the keywords were just that, keywords and studying for the exam. And then the Module 1 Learner's Guide, which gives you some actual sample questions to take. And, I'd like to assign homework at the end of each session. So you can have that Learner's Guide to help you go through the material that we've done today, in addition to kind of set up your own study guide, if you will. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. The Module 1, which is the business of healthcare, and it's called the big picture. Learning objectives, you'll be able to describe the structure of the U.S. healthcare industry, understand the impact of healthcare reform on the industry, explain the payment systems, and explain the role of financial management in healthcare. And one thing I want to note, it's important to study from the study material. I mean, this is a little dated, if you will, on some of the material that's in here, but the key to this and passing the exam is make sure that you study, from the keyword listing, from the slide decks, any information that Christina and I can give to you. But again, study from the material that's provided. The purpose of this chapter learning program, highlight key knowledge for strong job performance, provide an overview of important concepts, and the in-depth presentation is an online course. So again, I encourage you to go to the HFMA national website, and any information, any online courses that you can take, by all means, please do it. Please utilize that. The big picture. Healthcare in the U.S. is not a simple relationship between a sick or injured person. Usually we refer to those as the patient, and a party rendering medical care, such as a physician or hospital, even often referred to by the term provider. There are a multiple of different participants in the delivery of medical care, most of which are not directly involved with treating an illness or injury, and include insurers, regulators, and supplies. So if you kind of look at the screen here, the green arrow allows illustration of common flows of cash or money. The orange arrows illustrate legislative or regulatory influences, and the blue arrows illustrate flows of goods or services. The key point here is healthcare is not like any other type of purchases where the consumer makes a decision to buy something directly from a seller and pays the seller directly, such as with buying an appliance. Instead, a third party or insurer makes a payment on behalf of the consumer to the patient, or the supplier of services being the provider. This third party creates some extra work in healthcare that we may not see in other consumer industries. Financing the healthcare system. The
Well,
revenue,
I
sorry.
was sorry, I'm a little bit slow on the unmute. We're going to do a polling question before we go any further. So we're going to launch the first one. Can everybody see that?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So the revenue cycle in healthcare is the flow of money between the patient, the insurer, and the healthcare services provider, the sum of the internal processes that providers employ to receive payment, number of days between medical treatment and resolution of the patient's financial obligations, or a series of process benchmarks correlated to cash flows. Okay. Just give it a few more seconds and we'll close the polling. Okay, we're going to end the polling. And our results are number one, the flow of money between the patient, the insurer, and the healthcare services provider, 74% answered correctly. And we had a few others that picked some of the other questions, answers, I'm sorry. Okay. And now, John, I'm going to turn it back to you.
Okay, thanks. Financing the healthcare system. The revenue cycle in healthcare can be described as the flow of money between the patient, the insurer, and the provider of healthcare services. Depending on the type of insurance coverage a patient has, or they may have no insurance at all, the employer that provides insurance to the patient may also have a part in that description. The fundamental funding transaction. Basically, it's going to be between the patient and provider. The patient receives services from a physician or hospital. The patient makes payment for services out of personal funds. So with funding transactions, we have out-of-pockets between the patient and the provider. While many people in the U.S. have health insurance, we will start with illustrating the most basic relationship. And that's what we're showing above, that between just the patient and the hospital or physician that provides services to them. Prior to the passage of the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, ACA, that insurance was usually provided by an employer to the employee as an additional form of compensation, known as an employee benefit. Since passage of the ACA, it is common for some patients to obtain insurance directly from an insurer when the patient does not get health insurance as an employee benefit. Whenever the patient obtains health insurance, either through an individual plan or an employer-sponsored plan, insurers often require some out-of-pocket payment by the patient to go along with the insurance payment, usually as an incentive to the patient to use the insurance only when needed. So if you kind of look at the overall health insurance, you're going to have the co-pays, hospitals involved, doctors, physicians are involved, the insurance exchange is involved, claims are involved. So really, if you kind of look at the core and then everything that's involved in that, there's a lot of players within that particular health insurance core. Financing the healthcare system, the flow of money and services for a patient with a self-provided insurance. Prior to the passage of the Protection and Affordable Care Act, again, the ACA, the insurance was usually provided by an employer to the employee as an additional form of compensation known as an employee benefit. Since the passage of ACA, it is common for some patients to obtain insurance directly from an insurer when the patient does not get health insurance from an employee benefit. Whenever the patient obtains health insurance, either through an individual plan or an employer-sponsored plan, insurers require some out-of-pocket payment by the patient to go along with the insurance payment, usually as an incentive to the patient to use insurance only when needed. So if you kind of look at the chart above, it kind of goes into, who all is involved: the patient, the federal government. When we talk about the federal government, we talk about the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid, or CMS, and the providers, which could be either the hospitals or the physicians. Continuing on with the financing of the healthcare system, the flow of money and services for a patient with employer-provided insurance. Again, the illustration describes a normal flow of funds for services for a patient that has insurance provided by their employer. A situation that applies for about 149 million persons of age of less than 60, that are less than 65 years of age, or about half of the persons working in U.S. Flow of money and services for patient with Medicare.
Well, let's go ahead and do another polling question because it kind
Okay.
of pertains to the next slide.
Okay.
So this question is: Medicare is overseen by Congress's Ways and Means Committee, Health and Human Services, Department of Medicare Services, state Medicare offices, or the Federal Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, CMS. Okay, we're going to end the polling. And results, correct answer is the Federal Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, or CMS. 89% selected the correct answer. And now we're going to move on. So back to you, John. Okay, we are back to you, Mr. Lloyd.
Sorry about that. The flow of money and services for a patient with Medicare Parts A and B. The federal government, through the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, or CMS, and that was our previous polling question, oversee all parts of the Medicare program, including Medicare Part A and Medicare Part B. CMS receives Medicare payroll taxes from workers, along with Part B premiums from patients that add these funds to the Medicare Trust Fund. So it's important to know that basically the Medicare payroll taxes are funding for CMS in addition to Part B premiums, and Part B premiums are actually paid by the patient. The Medicare Trust Fund is an overall pool of money used to finance the Medicare program. However, CMS relies on organizations in various regions around the U.S. to administer payments on behalf of Medicare beneficiaries. Organizations acting on behalf of CMS to administer Medicare payments are known as a fiscal intermediary. Flow of money and services for a patient with Medicaid. And just kind of going over the slides that we're looking at, keep in mind each one of these scenarios are showing how the cash actually flows between the patient and be it a payer, be it an insured, and how they're actually getting their insurance. So again, these slide decks within themselves are great study tools. There is an insurance program from the poor and medically needy that is operated as a joint program between the federal government, CMS, and the individual states known as Medicaid. Each state has its own Medicaid program that is financed partially through tax revenues and paid to each state and a contribution for CMS. One thing to know about this, when it does come to Medicaid, a lot of us think, including me at one time, that basically all the Medicaid funding came from the state. It's actually some of that funding comes from CMS. Changes intended to reform the U.S. healthcare system. Given the relative size of the healthcare industry in the United States economy, healthcare has grown to the extent that there are concerns about the healthcare taking resources away from other parts of the U.S. economy. Recall that some people in the United States can obtain health insurance as a benefit of employment. However, the cost of health insurance increases the expenses for employers, which leads to increased prices for consumers and goods. Similarly, increased cost of government insurance programs creates pressure on legislatures to reduce funding to non-healthcare programs or increase taxes. Generally, there are some concern that the volume of expenditures for healthcare services in the U.S. is not sustainable over the long term. Therefore, there are some pressure on legislators in the U.S. to reform the healthcare system. And, this conversation has been going on for years. So again, it's just one of those things that it is expensive. There are costs involved, but having a better understanding, which we'll get from these study sessions, is going to benefit us when we actually deal with day-to-day operations in our organizations. The patient, I'm sorry.
We're going to go do another one real quick.
Okay.
Before we get started on the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, we've got a little question. All the following are key provisions except medical loss ratio, insurance exchanges, accountable care organization, or patient safety standards. Okay, we're going to go ahead and end the polling. And results, looks like we've got a little bit of work to do. The correct answer was patient safety standards. So we had a lot of people answer medical loss ratio, and that's exactly where John's going to start talking on the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act. So I am going to turn that back over to you, Mr. Lloyd, and mute myself.
Thanks, Lynn. The Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act. Much of the reform effort ultimately was aimed at reforming health insurance markets where major changes were applied to the way that health insurers operated, with some changes to influence more persons to get access to health care coverage. So when we talk about the Patient Protection and ACA, or the Affordable Care Act, this is a great study slide for you guys to have. Here are some of the key provisions of the ACA, or Affordable Care Act. The medical loss ratio, the individual mandate, the insurance mandates, the employer mandate, ACO, or Accountable Care Organization, population health, and bundle payments. Also, with your key terms, these words and definitions are broken out for you. Insurance plans were required to spend a minimum amount to collect revenues to pay for medical care of patients. This is called the medical loss ratio. More controversial changes implemented by ACA were around the overall insurance market. The individual mandate, which was a change to require individuals without employer-provided insurance to purchase health insurance through health insurance exchanges in each state or face tax penalties. The employer mandate was a provision of ACA where employers with more than 50 employees to make health insurance benefits available to employees. So with the employer mandate, it's important to know where an employer has more than 50 employees. That's one of the key phrases, and pretty much I think that is on one of the sample exams that we'll be giving out. ACA also called for some structural changes in delivery of healthcare services. The Accountable Care Organization, or ACO, are an opportunity for various providers of care to work together to change the healthcare of a select population of patients and to receive financial benefit, reducing from the cost of care while providing and improving the quality of care for those patients, also called population health. And I know over the past years, we've really seen the ACOs and accountable care organizations grow throughout the country. Related to the ACO was the addition of bundle payments to groups of providers for a single occasion of service to a specific patient. More on the bundle payment mechanism can be found in Course 5, which we'll talk about at a later date. The triple aim. The healthcare reform is intended to meet the triple aim of quality outcomes, reduce cost, and increase patient safety and satisfaction with treatment. And again, these are the three, or the triple aim, if you will. The role of financial management in healthcare organizations. This kind of walks us through a little bit of the C-suite and who plays major roles in what we do. The finance function. We have the Chief Executive Officer, Chief Financial Officer, Controller, and Finance Directors and staff. The finance function in many health organizations is carried out under the direction of the Chief Financial Officer, or the CFO. This is true in hospitals, health plans, and larger physician clinic entities. Some organizations may use the term controller to find the senior financial manager. Larger entities may have both a CFO as a senior leader in finance, with a controller reporting to the CFO. Usually the finance function reports directly to the Chief Executive Officer or the CEO of the business or to the owner in a smaller clinic setting. Some of the key financial management activities is accounting and bookkeeping, treasury, inventory, budgeting, payroll, accounts payable, financial analysis and revenue cycle, and insurers can add claim processing and contract management. The more we go through these modules over the next couple of weeks, we'll go into detail on the majority of these topics. Financial management in healthcare organization usually entails activities including accounting, bookkeeping, treasury, inventory budgeting, payroll, accounts payable, financial analysis, and revenue cycle. Further details on the inventory and the revenues and the revenue. Health insurance plans will usually include claim processing and contract management under the finance function. Finance is a strategic function, access to cost data plus access to clinical data through financial systems. Since it has access to much of the data needed to manage cost and can access clinical data through its financial functions, financial analysis activities, the finance function has adopted a much more strategic role in today's health care business. Historically, finance has had much of a recording function through accounting for business transactions. However, access into the understanding of historical data has placed finance now in a leadership role, aid in setting the future direction of healthcare business. However, with that broader strategy perspective, the challenges to the healthcare CFO are both diverse and difficult to balance. Current pressing issues in the big picture are value-based purchasing, quality measurement, the shift from volume to value, healthcare technology, access to capital, and risk contracting. As the value-based purchasing provisions of the ACA have taken effect on some providers, have seen significant reductions in payments for services. The impact of quality on payments has become critical. However, as the value-based purchasing provisions of ACA have taken, sorry about that. At the same time that the value is a priority in the healthcare industry, there's a significant upward inflammatory pressure on expenses, particularly in healthcare provider entities. A healthcare technology is also exerting significant upward pressure as the operating expenses in this industry. While technology innovation in some areas, such as computers or consumer electronics, usually yields reductions in the price to the buyer, such is not the case in healthcare. As new technologies enter healthcare, they generally cost more the demand for technology brings it with the need for resources as to pay for it. As pressures for lower costs limit the growth of payments to healthcare providers, their ability to finance new technology can be greatly hindered. Not only that, but the priorities on what technology are to obtain, or what technologies to obtain are challenging as emphasis on outcomes and cost increases on healthcare businesses. The advent of the ACO introduces the element of risk contracting. As a healthcare provider entity, insurance plans manage risk continually and also is less of an issue in such businesses. The ACO places hospitals and physicians at some risk of financial loss if the cost care to patients exceeds target levels set by insurers that contract with an ACO. Again, like I said, like over the past years, we've seen a major growth throughout the country in ACOs. This is our last slide, but again, I want to reemphasize the fact that you study the material as presented. And again, I encourage you to kind of go out and take the exam, see how you do. It's just a tool and a process. And I'm going to be honest, I think I took the exam about 3 times before I actually passed the CHFP, just for the simple fact I'd always been in revenue cycle. So I thought this would be easy to do, quick to do. It wasn't. I finally had to set up some study times, and I did it on a Thursday, like between 4 and 5:30. And basically that was my study time. I studied for about 2-3 weeks, and I did fine on the exam. But I really encourage you to study, take notes. Again, Christine and I are both available for any questions or anything that we could do a little bit differently on these presentations. We're open to any suggestions. We're still early on in the game, so we can change the format on some situations if needed.
And I have one final polling question.
Okay.
See if you were paying attention, because this was from early in the presentation. Question is, insurers, regulators, and suppliers are A, outside the scope of healthcare reform enacted in the PPACA, participants in the delivery of medical care that are not directly involved in treatment, are being positioned as a set of checks and balances for cost management, are challenged to be patient focused in their operations. Okay, we're going to end the polling. Our results. Looks like 82% selected the correct answer, participants in the delivery of medical care that are not directly involved in treatment. If you have not taken the Module 1 test yet, these are typically how the questions are formulated, and we do have some sample tests that we're going to be distributing later on in the course.
So just real quick before we get into questions, like I said, you'll have the learner's guide if you don't already have it yet. And in the learner's guide, my recommendation is you would take pages 2 through 5, which are actually related to course 1, and it'll kind of help you go back through and kind of there again set up your own study guides. So can we open it up for questions now?
Hey, John, this is Govi from the Florida chapter. I don't really have a question, more of a comment. Just first of all, thank you for doing this. I think this is going to be a huge help and provide a lot of value. I have some nervousness, some fear about taking this test, but it's nice to be able to have a group, kind of more a study group, and some interactive discussions. Do you recommend that we, I guess maybe I do have a question. Do you recommend that we take some of the online classes first, kind of before coming to this, or do it in reverse order, or does it kind of just, doesn't really matter, it's up to the learner themselves?
So great point. And I would recommend you take the online courses, and they're actually, outlined by course 1, course 2, course 3 before you come to this, because that way, depending on the questions, you can make some notes on your own. And there again, if you're not sure of the answer that you got from the website, definitely something we can discuss.
Right, thank you.
Thank you. And that was a great point. I know when I studied for my exam, there was probably about 6 or 10 of us in Georgia that kind of had a study group. And there again, I know Christine and I've talked about it. If we want to do any kind of breakouts on individual course, we'll be happy to do it for you guys. But it's kind of nice to have either a mentor or somebody that you can actually study with.
Absolutely.
So, hey, John, there's a question on how do they obtain the learning guide? Did we go over that, or do we need to reiterate?
So this kind of gets back to our technical difficulties for today. We're going to either upload them to the website, or we'll send all the attendees the attachment via email. So sometime, hopefully today, you'll have everything from today's session. And then going forward, you'll actually have that material before we start the sessions. So we had a few glitches, if you will. So
Yeah, I do know that I'm sure Georgia and the other chapters will be putting it. We'll have it on the Florida HFMA website once we have all that material. We will also be, as you can see, we are recording this, and it will be Florida, I believe, and I believe Georgia has as well a YouTube channel.
yes.
So as you go through your training, then you absolutely can go back and review those. I never thought I'd say I was going to be a YouTube star, but I got a bunch of hits out there. So as I'm sure John's going to get as well. So there is a question, John, is there any training for module 2? I believe that what we're planning to do is focus on module 1. You have to take module 1 before you can get into module 2 and pass it. So we want to focus on module 1 to start with, and then we'll follow back up with module 2. I think, John, if that's what we agreed to, right?
Yes. So just so you guys know, Christine and I talked about this as far as, because this is a lot, it really is. And we said, so let's go ahead and do module 1. And then once we wrap up module 1, we'll definitely look at doing a module 2. So, but yes, you're right, Christine. Because this is a lot of material. It really is. And can kind of condense it into 1 hour, and then try to get everybody kind of focused on the same thing. But it's just one of those things that really you got to study on your own. Once you study on your own, it just gets a lot easier. But again, I think actually it was Christine's suggestion, is divided up in 2 modules, which I think makes a lot more sense. And module 2 is really limited on the information, if you will. And kind of like for me, once I knew the material for module 1, module 2 was a breeze. So, I mean, I took the exam, so I passed module 1, realized I passed it, jump right into module 2. And, that's kind of my recommendation if you're out there. Because if you know module 1, chances are you're going to know the material and be able to do what you need to in module 2.
Agreed. And I'll reiterate what John said. If you think you're going to go out there and not study and pass the exams, it's not going to happen. I was just like John. I've been in revenue cycle for longer than I'm going to admit. And I thought I knew it too. And there's a lot of materials in here that It is not simple. So take the time, do the study sessions, review the materials. There was a question about where they can get the study sessions and the exams. If you go on to hfma.org and you click into education and events, you'll see where you have the certifications. If you go to the CHFP certifications, and I believe we kind of gave you a couple of screenshots of how to navigate through it, go into the CHFP HFMA certification tab, and you will have where it says pricing. It is free to HFMA members. You'll have module 1, the business of healthcare. Once you register for that, that course will then be available within your e-learning solutions within the HFMA. So that course will be there for you to launch. John, and there's one more question. I don't think I know the answer because the structure's changed since I passed it. If I take and pass to module 1, how long do I have to take module 2? And does module 2 have as many attempts like module 1?
You have up to a year to take module 2. And yes, with module 2, if you take it and do not receive a passing score, you can take it again in 30 days.
Yeah. And there was one more question. Should we take the exam now or wait until we get through the entire course? I believe what I heard John say is that you have 30 days. If you don't pass it, you have another 30, you have 30 days. You can take it in 30 days. So good opportunities. Go take the exam now, right? Sign up, take the exam, see what the types of questions are, recognize where you are really maybe not strong in. As John said, the financial aspects of it and the formulas I found to be something I really needed to study. That was not in my day-to-day. I'm revenue cycle just like John. So take it, see where you need to focus your energies on, what the exam is like, and then take these courses over the next few weeks, and then hopefully you're ready to take it again with that self-study as well.
Excellent suggestion. And it's okay. It's okay to go out there and not pass it. And I think all of us, because of our jobs and everything, we feel like nobody's going to know if you don't pass. Everybody's going to know if you do pass. So, again, just kind of go out there and familiarize yourself with it. And, by doing that, it may be some questions that you can bring back to this group and we'll be happy to answer for you. But it just kind of gives you an overall feel of what the exam's going to look like. It's all multiple choice questions. So that within itself kind of gives you a little bit of feedback. But, some of the questions you really have to read. And again, I can't emphasize enough, study from the material that Christina and I are getting to you guys.
Yeah. One more question. And I know, John, if this is something we can answer, we have to get it from National. Will module 2 have an extension on it since it is not accessible for a bit?
Great question. And Christine and I both deal with someone at National, and I'm waiting to hear back. I think there will be, because I know this came up on another call I was on the other day for another group, and they're going out and they're passing module 1 and they can't get into module 2. I actually sent her an email yesterday on this same question, so I'll have an update for the group next week.
Great. Thanks, John. I think I caught all the ones. If anybody wants to go off mute and ask a question, feel free. But I think I caught everything on the chat. Let me just double check. I think we got them.
Great. Well, I can't thank you guys enough for spending your lunch with Christine and I. So we're glad to be here. We're excited about doing this. And again, if there's something comes up through the week, if there's something, you have questions about, don't hesitate to reach out to us. We'll be glad to help you out. And that's it from me. Christine?
No, we're good. Enjoy studying, guys. Everybody, we'll talk to you next week.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.